Man, y'all stop that, man. I wouldn't tease y'all like that, man. I wouldn't tease y'all like that, man. It's real, man. First time ever getting free agent, man. And I'm just sitting back on the beach, man, waiting on it, man. Broncos country, what's up?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got some absolutely breaking news that I'm honestly still blown away by, and I honestly can't do anything but respect the man for being able to pull this off. Von Miller has made his decision. It's a team that we didn't think he was going to join. Before we get to the content, we are back for $500 to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. We're doing the same exact giveaway on Instagram, $500 to an Instagram follower. And of course, if you don't get my notifications, I think you got my notifications here, but our previous two videos on Yannick Ngakoue and Julio Jones didn't have notifications sent out because there was so much news to cover that at some point YouTube wanted to stop bugging you guys with all the notifications they send out. Join my Discord community in the description down below. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Dallas Cowboys, Los Angeles Rams, and originally the Denver Broncos were all in on Von Miller. And each of those teams definitely had a tie to Von Miller. Of course, for Von Miller, I felt like there was a pretty decent chance he would go to the Dallas Cowboys, considering what happened with Randy Gregory switching up on the Cowboys and joining the Denver Broncos, which we made a video on that late last night. It only made sense for Von Miller to go back to his roots. The man is from Texas. He went to Texas A&M for college. The Dallas Cowboys need an edge rusher. I felt like that would make a lot of sense. And then the LA Rams, they were the most recent team to have Von Miller on the roster. They traded for him in the middle of the season last year, and they had to give up a second-round pick and a third-round pick in the 2022 NFL draft in order to acquire him. And I felt like they were probably the team that presented the greatest opportunity to potentially win. After all, you won a Super Bowl with them. Wouldn't you want to go back there and defend your Super Bowl title? And then, of course, the Denver Broncos originally were my pick for getting Von Miller on their team. I felt like it'd be a really cool story to see Von Miller return to the Broncos after the Broncos were able to trade him for a second and third round selection, and now that the Broncos were significantly more competitive. But of course, they went ahead and signed Randy Gregory instead, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense for Von Miller to go to the Denver Broncos. And about a week ago, I thought that the Broncos were the most likely to get Von Miller because one, Von Miller was hardcore flirting with this team, as you saw in the beginning of the video, but two, they had a tremendous amount of cap space and they needed an additional edge rusher. I felt like the biggest dark horse to sign Von Miller at this point was the LA Rams. Why? Because at the end of the day, every free agent goes into free agency seeking something. And in Von Miller's case, I think he's satisfied with the amount of Super Bowls he's won. I don't think it would make a lot of sense for him to take a pay cut to go back to the Rams once he's won 2 Super Bowls and has already won a Super Bowl MVP. So you could rule them out, even though according to this report from Ian Rappaport, Sean McVay was incredibly persistent on doing whatever it took to get Von Miller to come back. But in the end of the day, it wasn't enough, and I really can't blame Von Miller for doing this because I don't think what he did has ever been done in NFL history. Because according to Von Miller himself, well, how about you guys take a look for yourself?
It's been crazy, man. Crazy 4 hours. Going back and forth, man. A lot of things that I love in LA, but I just wanted to let you know I'm coming to Buffalo. Bills Mafia, what's good?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Von Miller is joining the Buffalo Bills. Now, the interesting part here isn't necessarily the fact that I wasn't expecting Von Miller to join the Buffalo Bills. It's more the amount of money that the Buffalo Bills are giving Von Miller. Now, at the time that I'm making this video, the only information we have on this is the fact that it's a 6-year, $120 million contract, and it averages out to about $17.5 million a year. Von Miller is currently 32. He is not going to play the entirety of this contract. Obviously, this is just the language of the contract, but let's break this one down, man, because it is really, really impressive that Von Miller was able to secure this type of contract at this stage of his career. After tweeting out, I kind of want that old thing back, 5280, and flirting with the Dallas Cowboys, getting this contract at the age of 33 is unheard of. You need to think about where Von Miller was as a player a year ago. Going into this year, if you told me he would get this type of contract in the offseason, I would have laughed at you. Von Miller entered this season kind of in a similar place as JJ Watt was last year, and I guess on a kind of similar tier as what Chandler Jones got from the Las Vegas Raiders. Chandler Jones got a $51 million contract for 3 years with $34 million guaranteed. I was expecting Von Miller to get something in the ballpark of that. I know what you guys might be thinking, because this was my initial reaction as well. A 6-year, $120 million contract with $51.5 million in guarantees. It's not as bad as you think. It averages to about $17.5 million a year. It's primarily a backloaded contract, and it's a fair value for Von Miller, which I'm expecting him to play maybe 3 years with the Buffalo Bills in reality. But let's break this down, because if you look at the Buffalo Bills, man, this defense is absolutely loaded. Spotrac broke this down for us. On his previous 6-year contract, Von Miller got $70 million guaranteed and $42 million at signing. His 6-year contract with the Buffalo Bills contains $52 million in guarantees, $32 million fully guaranteed at signing. It's more like a 3-year, $53 million deal, but the language is such for practical purposes. So now that we got the contract stuff out of the way, let's really break this bad boy down. When you look at the Buffalo Bills defense, it is absolutely loaded at this point. I mean, they didn't really have a lot of holes to begin with. They were really looking for that dominant edge rusher. Last year, they drafted Greg Rousseau, and he was pretty solid in his first year, might I add. Now they have Greg Rousseau, AJ Epineza, and Ed Oliver on that defensive line, and that is just their front. Their linebackers are Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano, and their safeties are remarkable, amongst the best in the league, with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. That's before I even mention the likes of Tre'Davious White leading that defensive back unit. The Buffalo Bills got exactly what they needed, and this is pretty much what you need to do if you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The one thing that has always been Patrick Mahomes' weakness is getting to him and pressuring him as much as you can. That's how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to beat him in the Super Bowl, and the Buffalo Bills are currently probably in the framework of thinking, what do we need to do to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs? Because the past 2 years, that has been the team that has stopped them, and they've come very, very close to being able to beat them in both years. I honestly applaud Von Miller. I really respect players that really take control of their careers and ensure that they're in a situation to win Super Bowls and make bank. I've applauded Chris Paul in the NBA for doing this himself. The man signed a 4-year, $120 million contract at the age of 36 when he could have easily settled for a buyout and just jumping onto another team on the veteran minimum. Von Miller was in a very similar situation. He went into this season with not that much hype, especially coming off of an injured season. Many people thought that he was done, got traded to the Rams, helped them win a Super Bowl, hit free agency for the first time in his career, came out with $52 million guaranteed, joined another Super Bowl contender. The only problem with Buffalo, in my opinion, is the weather could get a little bit rough, but I highly doubt Von Miller minds that, especially after living in Denver. This puts him in a situation to win another Super Bowl and also get paid. Von Miller's career has been incredibly impressive so far, and I can't wait to see this next chapter for him. I give the Buffalo Bills an A- for this deal. I give Von Miller an A+ for going to the Buffalo Bills, and make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications so you can get the latest NFL news straight to your device, and join our Discord community in the event that notifications don't send out. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.